After 2 days of their stop, 9 men came up and showed joy and eagerness in seeing them. With that, Magellan realized that the men were reasonable. He and his troops welcomed them with food, gifts. Natives also gave some of the resources like fish, pearl wine, figs, 2 cocoas in return. This palm produced a fruit named kocho, which is as large as the head of terabytes. It first has its green and 2 fingers in thickness in it. They find certain thread with which they make the cord for fastening their boots. Under this husk, there is another very hard and thicker than that of a walnut. Gavetta described the natives as very familiar and friendly. Natives also willingly showed them different islands, and its name the fleet went to the Moon Island, where they found the watering place of Goadside. In the description of Gavetta, watering place of Goadside is a place where they found the first god signs of God in the island, and they named the island and its nearby as Saint Lazar. March 25th, they left the island. They also saw 2 balanghay and cafe to describe it as a long boat full of people in Mazava. The king or leader of Balanghay sent his men to the ship of Magellan. The king offered gold and chests of finger to Magellan, but he refused it. Magellan told them that they came as friends, not enemies. Through a slave interpreter, Henry, the 2 expressed their desire to be brothers, were the king giving the provisions of food in China, where attacking Spider is also a king of another island was introduced to Magellan. They visited the king's island and saw a shine of gold to emphasize the abundance of gold that it can be seen in the king's step house and accessories like the golden dagger. The king attended the mass and sent 2 dead pigs. Both the king participated in the mass. Where the authority of the mass came, the 2 kings went to kiss the cross like us, but they offered nothing. And at the elevation of the body of our Lord, they were kneeling like us and adored our Lord with joined hands. After the mass, Magellan ordered that the cross be both with nails and crown, and so it can also serve as protection for them. So this was written in the history as the first mass in the Philippines, and the cross becomes the famous Magellan's Cross. After 7 days, Magellan moved and looked for islands where they could acquire more supplies. Then they learned the islands of Ceylon, Bohol, and Cebu. Later on, after the king consulted his council, the king offered a bit of his blood and demanded Magellan to do the same. In the days that followed, Magellan spoke before the people of Cebu about peace and God natives didn't wish to become Christian to their free will and not because they were forced or intimidated. Magellan spoke to the king and encouraged him to be a good Christian and warn other idols and worship the cross instead, so that the king and all his people answered that they would obey the commands of the captain and do all that befell them. The captain took the king by the hand and they walked about on the scaffolding, and when he was baptized he said that he would name him Don Carlos. As the emperor, his submarine was named in the same of the prince Don Fernando. To the brother of the emperor and the king of the Masaba Jaihan, to the more he gave the name of the Christopher, and to the other each name of his friends. Lula, a principal man from the island of Mactan, went to see Magellan and asked him for a boat full of men so that he would be able to fight the chief named si Lapu-Lapu. As he refused to obey the king and also preventing him from doing so, Magellan then offered 3 boats instead of expressed his desire to go to Mactan himself to fight the force. Magellan arrived in daylight in Mactan. They numbered 49 in total, and the islanders of Mactan were estimated to number 1,500. And so, the battle began.
When we reached the land, we found the islander 1,500 in numbers, drawn up in the 3 squadrons. They came down upon us with a terrible shout, the squadron attacking on us the flank, and the third in the front. The captain then divided his men into 2 bands. Our musketeers and crossbowmen fired for half an hour from a distance, but did nothing, since the bullet and arrows through they passed through their shields, made of tin woods, and perhaps wounded their arms. yet did not stop them. The captain shouted not to fire, but he was not listened to. The islanders seemed that the shot of our gun did them little, or no harm would not retire, but shouted more loudly, and springing from one side to the other to avoid our shot. They at the same time drew nearer to us, throwing arrows, javelins, spears hardened in fire, stone, and even mans, so that we could hardly defend ourselves. Some of them cast lance pointed with iron and at Captain General. Whilst the Indian were those overpowering him, several times he turned around toward us to see if we were all in safety, as through his obstinate fight had no other object than to give an opportunity to the retreat of his men.